What if I told you that the pentagram can unlock the secrets of creation and make you manifest any reality you want? Hence why the pentagram is used heavily in magic and witchcraft. We have to understand that the pentagram has been heavily demonized. Religions, churches claim that this symbol is associated with Satanism and witchcraft. I personally believe this was intentionally done so that people do not gain their personal power over reality and their life. The pentagram reveals so much about you, and it is one of the most important symbols to understand inside the occult studies. It is one of the most common symbols that you will see across all occult esoteric orders and different occult traditions, such as Freemasonry, Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, alchemy. You will see this symbol everywhere. And in fact, you even see this symbol, the pentagram, on old church buildings, statues of Jesus next to church buildings. You will see this symbol used by Christianity itself, which is very contradicting about the church. But I'm not here to tell you to think anything. You can simply take this information with a pinch of salt and see if it benefits you. The pentagram used by the early Christians was said to symbolize the 5 wounds of Jesus on the cross. But this goes much deeper in an esoteric explanation. The pentagram ultimately represents the 5 elements of creation. All creation falls within these 5 elements. We have spirit on the very top, then you have air, water, earth, fire. This is the correct placement and order of the elements. Air is always on the left, water is always on the top right, earth very bottom left, fire bottom right, and spirit placed on the tip point of the pentagram. It's a 5-pointed star drawn with one continuous line. But this actually reveals much deeper things, and we're going to be going into how to use this symbol for magic and creating your reality towards the end of this video. But now we're going to give you a basic understanding of the pentagram. It's showing you the 4 physical elements symbolized as triangles and spirit symbolized as a circle. The 4 physical elements are made out of the base element, spirit, or what the ancients call ether. Ether is the underlying base of all physical matter. This is the substance that animates physical matter with life force. All physical matter has its origin in the etheric substance, or spirit, what we want to call it. It is simply the life force that animates the physical thing. However, if we go deeper onto this symbol, it also represents something personal to the individual who wears this symbol. If you wear this symbol, you're basically saying you're putting your divine nature over your material nature. Your divine self is in control of your material self. You put your spiritual needs before your physical desires and needs. Hence why the spirit is on top, looking down over the 4 physical elements. The circle is continuous, one line, eternal, no beginning, no end. The triangle has beginning and end and points. You can see the beginning and the end when you draw it. On a deeper level, this is pretty much showing the process that symbolizes the structure of the macrocosm, the universe itself, showing how the invisible spiritual planes condense and crystallize into the visible physical world, spirit turning into physical reality. But if you wear this symbol, you're basically saying, I put my divine nature over my material nature, showing that your spiritual nature rules over your earthly existence. You put your spiritual needs first. If you see this inverted, it is now the opposite, placing spirit on the bottom, basically saying, I desire the physical things over the spiritual. But what exactly is your spiritual nature? Well, your spiritual nature is simply your internal self. You chase things that are immaterial, such as knowledge, love, experience, expansion, gnosis. These are the qualities of spiritual things that the spiritual person likes to chase and desire, instead of desiring the things that are temporary in the material world and never actually lead to fulfillment. True fulfillment is by chasing spiritual things. God, the nature of creation, the self, gnosis, knowledge. But if we go even deeper, this symbol ultimately represents how reality is created. Hence why this symbol is heavily used in Kabbalistic magic and so-called witchcraft. We are all magicians. Each one of us are creating reality. There are just certain ways you can actually create reality by becoming conscious of them. By becoming conscious of the elements and the qualities of the self that actually create your experience in your life in the present moment. If we look at the pentagram, we see that when you draw a pentagram, it is one continuous line. It is one expressed in 5. The order of the elements are very important. Spirit at the bottom, fire at the bottom right, and so on and so on. Because this is showing you the descent of the spiritual into the material, the invisible crystallizing into a material reality. As you can see when you start to draw the pentagram, you see spirit at the very top. You're descending down to fire. Fire is the closest element to spirit. Hence why in magic and witchcraft, people like to use candles. So you're descending first into fire, then into air, then into water, then into earth, then back into spirit. Because of course, the cycle of creation unfolds itself. When you die, you return back to spirit, and then you reincarnate yourself back into physical reality if you wish and desire to. Everything is under this process of matter spiritual. In the daytime you wake up, you're in your material body. When you go to sleep, you enter your astral spiritual body. Everything's in this continual process, renewing itself in spiritual, then material. But the reason why this is associated with magic so heavily is because each one of these elements corresponds to a different body of consciousness, a different vehicle of consciousness. Consciousness has many different vehicles it uses to create the tangible self, the physical reality. For example, consciousness has a spiritual nature. The spirit element in this case symbolizes the emanation, the descent of the one power, the one force that we are all using. Each one of us is using this one power, the power of the source consciousness, unfolding its creation in the present moment. This represents the source, the emanation, the descent of this continuous flow of energy through us that we are tapped into, like a live stream in the present moment. This descends first, the force descends into fire. Fire symbolizes the willpower, will. In this aspect or vehicle of consciousness, the will is the being that directs intention, initiates action, shapes reality through focus, determination. It sets direction, holds intention, projects a desire into form, and aligns your inner world with the outer creation. The will comes out of the force, spirit. Then the will goes with intention to air. Air symbolizes the mental vehicle of consciousness, the mind, the psychic man. The psychic aspects of your consciousness is thinking, imagination, mental images, logic, using the thought or the mental vehicle body of consciousness. Then that thought has an emotion, which is then water. So it goes from the force to the will to the intellect to the water, the emotional body of consciousness. The emotional vehicle of consciousness amplifies the thought into an emotional desire that you want to take action on. No one takes random actions, and if we do, we say we're very bored and we don't care. The water is the energy, the emotion you have to fulfill something. And that emotion then descends into earth, which is the physical body to take the physical action in the present moment, to fulfill that desire, to fulfill that will, that thought, that desire. And that is how reality is created all the time. Now, there is much more that you can go into with the pentagram, because true magic is about changing consciousness at will, not casting random spells. It's the ability to change the direction of consciousness using the power of the will to direct these forces to create change in the internal world so it can project outwardly in the external world. Because consciousness creates the external reality. What happens within us, we see change outside of us. So true magic is about manipulating the forces and the vehicles of consciousness that exist within our own mind to produce a change in the material world. There are other ways you can use magic, by purifying each body of consciousness or banishing each body of consciousness. Other forms of magic, you can dissect each body of consciousness and work with that specific body. If you think you're using your mind too much, you can start using banishing rituals to banish the power of the mind to stop overthinking, for example. Or if you have lack of emotional connection with your emotional vehicle of consciousness, we can dissect this body, tap into this body, and invoke this body and strengthen it. We're dissecting each body and vehicle of consciousness so we can work with it to create a specific change inside ourselves, then to be mirrored outside of us. So pretty much this pentagram represents the descent of the spiritual turning into a material reality. Hence why sometimes we see a human figure standing in the point of a pentagram, because it ultimately represents the microcosm. You are the microcosm. You represent the entire process of spirit into matter, the invisible into the visible, the formless into form. The pentagram, drawn in one unbroken motion, captures this divine act of creation, showing how consciousness flows downward through the elements or the vehicles of consciousness to bring forth the material reality. The Book of Symbolism will teach you all about this. It was released November 17th. A lot of people have taken advantage of this. You also gain a free ebook with this copy. Every order comes with a free ebook. And if you wish to get your copy of the brand new Book of Symbolism, you can find it in the description or revivalofwisdom.com. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.